So this complication that's introduced into all of our systems not only makes our lives difficult in the present when we're trying to build something, it accelerates the loss of knowledge over time, right? So first of all, there's more to know when things are more complicated. And so if you talk about a job spread among many people, each individual person knows a smaller percent of what they need to do. They have a less global view, which makes it harder to do good work, right? And harder to transmit their knowledge onto people in the future. Another thing that happens is that deep knowledge becomes replaced by trivia. So deep knowledge might be a general concept, like here's how cache coherency works. And that enables software to run fast on like different processors and stuff. And trivia is something like, well, this sprite in Unity doesn't display properly for some reason, but we know we can fix it if you open this panel and toggle this Boolean. And that fixes it for a while, but then some weeks later, for random reasons, the Boolean mysteriously untoggles. So just make sure to check that before you ship, and it'll be fine, right? And the reason that's trivial is not only because it doesn't apply to anything else in the world, but it's also going to be outdated in 6 months when the next Unity comes out. And it's just offensive that we're spending our brain power on these things. Okay? And the third thing that happens is good information is drowned by noise. So if something is really hard to understand, the percentage of people who put the effort into understanding it is going to be small. And the harder it is, the smaller that percentage. And so if you ask people, or you learn at a school, or you search on the web, your probability of getting a bad answer to the problem is much higher for more complicated things than it is for less complicated things. And so the complication propagates and magnifies. So let's get back to this collapse of civilization stuff, right? What the hell are we doing, right? So here's an interesting question someone asked on Quora. Why does Twitter need 300 employees? I'm just curious. What is the organizational breakdown? Blah, blah, blah. Because it seemed crazy when this was posted that Twitter had 300 people to do such a simple website. Okay, this was a few years ago, though, because Twitter is a lot bigger than 300 employees. Well, first let's read the answer that was given. And I've erase the name of the person who posted this, but it's somebody who worked at Twitter. And she said, well, it's about half engineers, not including operations. The rest is sales, designers, product managers, accountants, legal, recruiting, and HR. As to how big we're going to be, as big as we need to be. Edit. I remember my housemate was once incredulous as to why we needed so many engineers for such an apparently simple site. 1, Twitter's not as simple a website as you think. Keeping Justin Bieber from dominating the trends and user recommendations are 2 examples of non-trivial features. 2, like Facebook, the core functionality is simple and most people could do it in a weekend, but getting it all to work at scale is hard. I firmly believe we need every single engineer we have here, and we need more. Apparently they did. We'll keep going into this explanation. Here's a rough breakdown of where our engineers are. Internal tools, including the Help Center, the Twitter admin, the A/B testing framework, etc. Infrastructure, performance, Rails tweaking, writing job daemons, API platform relevance, whatever. I'm going to go on. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it just lists a breakdown of like all these different things that one could do. We won't analyze it yet. Here's Twitter now. Well, this was Twitter maybe around their peak. They just laid off about 350 people, so they're probably toward the mid-3000s. And you can say, wow, that explanation really was convincing, even though I didn't read the whole thing. You know, there are all those things that you have to do. I hadn't thought about that. But you know, you can look at examples of some other companies. So for example, SpaceX is around 4,500 approximately employees, and they build and launch rockets into space and then land them on the ground, which has never, and like dock with the International Space Station. How is Twitter remotely of that same scale of effort, right? It isn't, I claim, right? I've been on Twitter since 2010, which I felt like a little bit of a late arrival to Twitter. I was putting it off, like a lot of other people in the games industry were on it at that time. Let's look back at this graph. In 2010, they had 130 employees in January 2010 when I joined. I can tell you from my day-to-day use, it's basically the same website. It just has a few more things that I really don't want, right? But they've gone from 130 people to 3,900 people. Let's assume that it's about half engineers. It's probably more than half back here, right? Because they haven't like staffed up to have sales and all that. But call it 130 engineers to 2,000 engineers to still do basically the same thing. It's a little bit crazy. What is happening? So you could say, well, maybe they're building a very high quality product. But I can tell you that's really not true. So yesterday while I was working on this talk, right, I made a tweet and I misspelled a word, which happens all the time because you're typing really fast. You can't edit tweets. So I deleted it and I said, oh, if I delete it and paste it in really fast and fix it, then I'll get it out and it won't go to that many people. So I deleted the tweet and then I was trying to paste it in and edit in the box. And this "your tweet has been deleted" thing kind of pops down from here, and it's covering the box where you need to type, and it wouldn't go away. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I kept trying to make it go away. I tried scrolling down on the page. I eventually had to reload the page and then paste the thing. And by then, my whole, like, I'll slip in the quick change tweet, it was really a little bit of a lost cause at that point. So all those engineers are not working on software quality, as near as I can tell. The software is still basically terrible, right? It's basically the same thing it was in 2010. It does a few things a little bit better. It does some things a lot worse. Now they try to move buttons around on you, like they put that moments button up there where you used to click all the time in order to try and get you to click on it. So a lot of those engineers, it was probably 10 people's job just to move that button. I mean, I don't even know when you have that many people what they're doing. Facebook is also a website, right? Facebook does a lot of things, right? They put out a lot of open source software. They release a number of things. A while back, there was a situation on Android where they had to release a patch for certain versions of Android because their Facebook app would not run otherwise. And it was a very controversial thing. They were doing things that were a little bit nasty and could cause problems for users. And there was this explanation posted for why. And the guy says, I didn't block out his name, sorry. But the guy says, Facebook is one of the most feature-rich apps available for Android, with features like push notifications, newsfeed, and an embedded version of Facebook Messenger all working together in real time. The complexity and volume of code creates technical challenges that few, if any, other Android developers face. I don't know if this dude has ever seen a video game, but like anybody from the game industry, even beginner indie game developers would look at like push notifications, a news feed, and an embedded messenger and like laugh that off the face of the planet as being difficult to do. Like there's just, however, right, having said this, I'm not denying that possibly it is very difficult to do at Facebook within the organization and engineering culture that Facebook has created. So he may be partially correct in his statement, but many people I know read this and think it's very embarrassing for Facebook. And Facebook has done a number of things just like this. There's a certain something. Let's not go too far. Anyway, so there was another blogger who looked at the Facebook iOS application, which is roughly the same application, and someone had noticed, well, this application is very large. It's over 100 megabytes. Why is it so big? It doesn't have that many graphical assets or audio assets or things that you would usually expect to make something big. And they were like, oh, well, the binary is really big, and I wonder why. And so he dug into it, and he found that there's over 18,000 classes in it. Right? So, it's some kind of Java app where they decided to factor it in an extreme way. And there's 18,000 classes. And then the thing that caused this Android problem is that there's a fixed size buffer on Android that holds the address of functions, right? And they made it much bigger than they thought anybody would ever reasonably need, right? But if you have 18,000 classes, you're going to overflow that buffer, right? So, there was a whole discussion about this. One guy from Facebook, he wasn't really a spokesperson for Facebook. He was just a random engineer, so I don't want to pick on him too much. But he was just like, he was defending it. He was like, oh yeah, it's a really sophisticated program, right? Android cannot handle the intensity of this program, right? It's freaking Facebook. It shows messages from people you barely know, right? It shows bitmaps. Like, it's not hard. And yet, look at how many people Facebook has doing that. In 2015, they had over 12,000. And you can say, well, oh my God, they've got an Android app and an iOS app, and like, what? And they've got their other like paper thing that they built or something. But it's, I mean, how many thousand engineers on each of those things do you actually need in order to build this?